And it was so well received because it was an honest talk about the realities of being a female in our industry. And it's something that this group is not afraid to talk about and not afraid to tackle the issues. We know that we are different, and we know that there's a lot of challenges that we have all gone through in our careers. So to kick it off, I'm going to kick it to Alicia, and each is going to sort of just tell you about themselves, a little about their career, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Thank you, Emily. I'm Alicia Voltmer. I am a board-certified labor and employment law attorney. I'm in my 26th year of practice, so for those of you looking, that means that I graduated law school when I was 3. That's right. I work in the hospitality industry. I represent restaurants as well as other industries. And in my spare time, I like to climb mountains and write books.
And, hang on, what kind of mountains?
Big ones.
Like which name?
Everest and Kilimanjaro.
Oh, wow.
She's very humble, but the fact that
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. Vanessa.
I think this is falling a little bit. There we go. I'm Vanessa Miller, and I'm the director of special events for the County Line BBQ restaurants. And I started my career when I was 16 years old. I was hired at Chuck E. Cheese. So that was 25 years ago. And I went to Texas State University in hopes to be a teacher, but I was working my way through college in the hospitality industry and realized that that was really where my passion lied. And so I have stayed in the industry. I've worked for County Line for 15 years and specialize in events. I'm very happy to be here today.
And I'm going to add, anyone go to last night's party? Yes. If you don't, make sure you go next year. But this woman led the committee that made all of that happen.
Oh, wow.
So it was a wonderful event. Carin.
Thank you, Emily. Emily and I have known each other, as I said in the last group, we judged for at least 7 years or so the National Pro Star, and that's how I got to know her. And I know I'm in Kansas City, which we think we have the best barbecue, but I keep County Line sauces in my pantry when everybody comes over, so it's fabulous. So it's a family favorite. Yeah, I've been in the restaurant industry forever. Really started out McDonald's and Wendy's, and worked my way up from the front lines to leadership roles. Then I moved into casual dining, working for Applebee's, Chili's, and the Red Robin. And then I moved into fast casual. I've kind of always followed the growth. But yeah, one of the few, I think growing up, maybe one of the early women who stayed in line positions and have been able to run, several companies. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, Carin's been CEO now of Native Foods, but also I remember she would be always tackling the math with our ProStart students in the competition, and she would tell, especially the females, know your numbers. I'll never forget that. Know your numbers. If you know your numbers, you're never going to be sidelined. And so many women, by nature, we avoid the numbers. But if you can be great at the financial side, some love them, yes. But I think I remember that about her, and to rise to that level, especially I think at a time when it was very difficult for women. I just applaud you.
Thank you.
Alli.
Hey everybody, it's great to be here. My name's Alli Jarrett, and I have a restaurant in Houston called Harold's in the Heights. And I guess the way I came about all this, I grew up in a family-owned wholesale business in South Carolina. And my first job in, in hospitality, I was a bartender at a country club for playing privileges to play golf. And I haven't really said that out loud before ever until today, which is funny to think about that. Anyway, then I went on to actually have a slightly different path. I worked for the United States Golf Association for 15 years and then was ready to get off the road and get back to family business and started the Heights General Store at Harold's, which was a combination of a multi-concept with a neighborhood food market and a restaurant. And unfortunately, the food market, which is what I knew most about, did not do very well. And Harold's is still there, thank goodness. So that's a little bit about me.
And last night, every year there's a competition in our Texas Restaurant Awards for the Restaurateur of the Year, and the 23 chapters nominate, and then a committee goes through and selects that person that made a tremendous impact on their community, but also on the business, does things with integrity, is running a successful company, and Alli was the 2022 winner. So I want to make sure we recognize that. All right, ladies, I'm going to start with, I hope, a good question, but one that I want you to share the worst of the worst. So let's start with Carin.
Okay.
What is the biggest challenge that you have faced as a woman in this industry in your career?
Well, there's a few. Let me think that through. I guess I'll start with the basic ones that sometimes keeps us from moving forward. Because you always say, what's the worst thing that can happen? You can get fired. Well, I did. It's hard. I mean, it's really painful. And you don't know well, you kind of know it's coming, but you don't know that it's coming. And just to give a little color around it, and it was by a woman. So even a little bit more challenging at times. She was the CEO, I was the COO. I'll just tell that it was Red Robin. And if you kind of watched how the companies have rebounded, a lot of the casual diners have done incredibly well. Red Robin has not figured out how to move forward. And so you have, your 8 members of your senior team sitting around, and the CEO has the ear of the CFO. And the CFO is, okay, this is, maybe make it really simple. It's a commodity business in a sense. It's a burger. If you're going to go to Red Robin, you've decided, I don't want to go through a drive-through. I don't want to order at the counter. Please wait on me, right, for that $10 burger. The CFO decides, we're going to cut the busser. We're going to cut the expo. Now the next thing is that we're going to cut the host, and I'm like, I am not having this. I probably didn't handle it well. I'll just be very honest with you, but I was probably the only person with the courage to sit at the table and say, that's not going to work for us. Now, she being the CEO, we have a tough quarter. She's got to pick one person to go. Who do you think it's going to be? It's going to be me. And we're still friends. It's not personal, it's professional. But we've done so many good things in the industry, in the business, but at one point you've got to speak your own truth, right? I felt my role as the operator, the COO, was to be a voice for the operator and voice for the franchisees. Well, it cost me my job, but ultimately it cost her job because she listened to the wrong people. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but we just missed the mark. And it's hard to sit at the table and have courage when you know it might not go the way you want, but you sleep well at night.
I think that's a great example, and I know I've been at that table before too, and out in the hallway everyone said this was the dumbest idea ever, but then when they walk in the room they support the idea. And I would sometimes be looking around like, what, am I in a cartoon? Like, what just happened? And everyone's playing the game, and then if you have conviction, you tend not to stay, but you always then typically rise even higher once you've exited yourself. And I did watch that transaction, and I watched her depart not that far long after. And so sometimes as a female, you have to know what voices to listen to as the leader. If the CEO had a better sense of who was actually on their side and who was telling them what they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear, they both may still be there. So that's a great story. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Vanessa? Don't everyone jump at once?
You guys really are not that intimidating. I was a little nervous, but we, I started very young, obviously, in the hospitality, and so at the time I also looked very young, and I have a very, I would like to say, sweet disposition. So I feel like when I was younger, I was not taken seriously at all, and especially being a woman, I was young, and I was in these leadership roles, and so I really didn't have a seat at the table at all. They really just thought that, I maybe wasn't interested, or that, it didn't matter if I was there. And I remember that one day a peer of mine said, that you are the top sales of all the private events in the entire company, and this company had 100 restaurants. And I was like, what? And I didn't even have an actual private event space. It was all semi-private. So all these other private dining coordinators had beautiful private event space, and I just had shutters I would put up and I would sell it. And I was top in the company, but no one told me. No one affirmed what I was doing, and I wasn't taken serious. And I thought, you know what? that's a bunch of bullshit. And I'm gonna make my voice be heard, and I'm gonna stand up, and I'm gonna be firm in what my intentions are in my position and where I want to go and where I want to grow. And so I've done that from that day forward. I was only about 22 when that happened to me, and now I'm very firm in my convictions and my intentions, and I'm taken seriously, I feel like.
Very much so.
And that was done by a woman who was also kind of suppressing my voice in the room, unfortunately. And so I decided I would never be a leader as well, that I would always lift up and mentor the young women that were below and trying to build their careers.
Sometimes women are the worst to other women.
Yeah.
And I was at a conference in Asia, and it was a women in leadership conference in education, and I got asked that question, why are women so unhelpful to other women? I didn't really have an answer. I thought about it for a second, and I said, you know what, I think part of it is we work so hard to get to the top of the pole, and you're holding on because so many people want that spot. And if you let go with one arm, you may slip yourself. And so as we almost have to be more cognizant that if we don't reach down and help this next group of women, that there will be no women when we all retire in the places they need to be. And you're right, because sometimes your advocate isn't that woman next to you because they're trying to cut you out. And it's the men that I've worked for, interesting enough, have been the ones to help accelerate my career. So we have to fix that.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quickly, we can't believe that there's only one seat at the table for us, right? And that's what happened. They used to call it tripping the prom queen. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression. But anybody trying to move up, it's like, okay, well, she's probably going to be a little bit better than me. Whack, you know? I need to make sure she doesn't get the one seat because I want to retain it.
Yeah.
And it's just not the way to go. There's room for us all.
Yeah.
And that's why we need more seats for women at the table. So
Yes.
there isn't just one to fight over.
Exactly.
Alli,
Sure. Mine would be finding my voice, and it's actually a pretty funny story. When I first started practicing law, I was the only woman in a litigation section in a very large law firm. And I had a case pending in East Texas, and there was a lawyer I would get on the phone with, and I would put him on speakerphone, and he would scream at me every conversation. Just yell at me for no good reason, but every conversation was screaming. And my boss, another man next to me, heard me, and he came in and he said, also from East Texas, he said, I don't know why you're putting up with that. You just be screaming back at him, and you curse him out. And he's giving me leeway to be rude and obnoxious to this lawyer. Well, I was raised in the South, and my mama didn't teach me that way. We don't swear at people on the phone. We don't act that way. So the next time he called me, I had him on speakerphone, and he starts screaming at me, and he says, little lady, I'm going to tell you the way it's going to be. And I just started laughing, giggling like a 5-year-old. And that just made him really angry. And he said, what's so dang funny? And I couldn't see him, but I said, if you saw me, the last thing you would say to my face is little lady, because in heels, I am 6'5". And when I saw him in court, I wore 5-inch heels, and I towered over him, and I said, hi, I'm little lady. Never yelled at me again. So did not, yelling back at him was not the way. That's not my voice. My voice was just to show him. And it works.
that is awesome.
Great.
I do know if we're going to meet someone maybe she's not as fond of because she has really high heels. Alli?
There are quite a few, actually. One hospitality example, specifically at Harold's, would be the first time I had to unhire a man. And I'll call it that, right? And it took a hot minute. It took too long. I waited too long to do it, and I'm not sure why I stewed over it so long. But it was different because I hadn't been in that position as the owner of the company doing that, and what was going to happen, because this person was so well liked and did so many things well. But just was not the right thing for us to be able to go where we were going. And so when you like somebody and you need to do that, it's not very easy. And I think that would be an example that comes to mind early in my hospitality career.
I think that is such a good point too, and I think I call it learning to not be liked. And it's one of the hardest things we as women deal with. We want everybody to like us, everybody. And if you have to make those tough calls, which is what makes you a great leader, right? You're not always going to be liked. I remember doing a big layoff when I was at Pearson Education, and I was in tears at night. And all of a sudden, my husband looked at me and he's like, "It's going to be fine tomorrow." And I said, "But everyone at home right now is talking about how much they hate me." And he's like, "They'll get over it, and you'll get over it. Was it the right decision for the broader organization?" I said, "Yeah, we wouldn't make it without doing that." He said, "Then you need to move on." But I remember that pivotal moment because I was so concerned about those people that it almost made me not do the right thing for the broader organization. It would have been hundreds of people that would have been impacted. So I think as you can learn to not be liked and know what you said earlier, it's not personal, I think that's such an important skill. So let's talk about childcare for our employees. I firmly believe that we have a broken childcare system. I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. If we're paying someone $17 an hour to come work for us, and they're paying $15 an hour to put that one child into childcare, where does the rest of the expenses? How are they covered? They're not. The math simply doesn't work. And childcare costs have skyrocketed in the pandemic. Skyrocketed. So now we're asking all of these, and remember, we're almost 70% women in our industry. We're asking all of these women now to come back to work and to work for us, and instead of trying to figure out how to fix this system, we just deem them as lazy. People just don't want to work, they're lazy, Emily. I don't believe that. I think that they're making a rational choice for their family, and most of our companies have jobs that you can't do them from home. So what are we going to do about this? Well, I mean, do you just give up on women and say we need people that at the highest levels, which we can't seem to get to? But how do we solve this problem? It's not just our industry. Our industry's just hit so hard because we have so many women and we're so transient from you've got to be in that building serving someone. Mm-hmm. Anyone want to tackle that?
I can jump in. I don't have children, but I do have nieces and nephews and godchildren. But having had staff members that had to make the choice of whether they work or care for their children, particularly during the pandemic, was alive and well. I certainly don't have the answers, except that we have to collectively keep working and talking about it to try to find the answers. I'll let you know that my physician, who, totally different industry in healthcare, she and her husband, it was better for her to keep working and he stopped so he could take care of their children. And so this is not just our issue, it's a broad issue and affecting all types of industries and women. And thankfully he volunteered to put his career aside so she could keep hers going. But hopefully we can come to a point where neither has to give up what they love to do to keep moving forward.
That's right. Carin?
It is interesting, and I think it goes beyond that, too. I have two daughter-in-laws. One's a VA doc, and the other worked for a healthcare company. They didn't even have maternity leave, right? So, I mean, we've got a long way to go in a lot of companies, so it's not just about that. I think, gosh, I remember working in, 1986. It was like one of the Hinsdale Oasis over 294, and we had a lottery booth in there, and they told us we wanted to do the lottery booth because it was going to be really geared towards education for younger children. So we would start to be able to go, pre-K, and I think a lot of it still is geared to that. But I don't know how that lottery money is spent, but I would love to see it all go to childcare. And because there's got to be a huge fund. If they can spend that much advertising on it, give us that money for childcare, because we all know it exists.
That's right. That's right. And we know we was secured, I guess, just under $800 million from the state of Texas with the Workforce Commission to give 1 year of free childcare to our workforce. And what was interesting about it is just trying to get the word out. It's like a college scholarship. So many go unused because no one applies. Wow. So even when we had the funds to do this, it's sort of, we need to figure out how do we make sure the people that need it the most can access it and can access it easily.
Wow. And they were scared to apply.
And they were scared to apply.
Scared to apply.
That is a big piece of it. Absolutely.
I think we've really, really tried to listen to what they're asking us. If they come to us and say, listen, I want to be part-time because of childcare, and we're like, okay, let's look at your schedule. Let's see how we can figure this out. And so that communication is very key. We had one of our event coordinators had a baby, And she's like, listen, I want to come back to work after maternity leave. How can we do this? Because this is what I can afford in childcare, but I want to come back to work. And so we figured out, 2 days working from home, and so she could do a part-time daycare, and then her mom. So she figured out, but it really was just something we had to really listen to what she wanted to do, how she wanted to continue her career, because she's very valuable to us, and she's not only like family, but a part of the business and the health of the business. So really listening and being flexible was helpful in that particular situation. But yeah, we don't have the answer, and we did send that information to many of our employees, and so they did apply. So we're hoping that I know that it's about a year waiting right now for the monies to come in.
Yeah, and I would say, that creativity, I just was talking to a company, and they're moving to, the ordering will be digital, but there'll be a person. You go through the drive-through, and you'll see the person, but that person's at home taking your order. And so they're looking at ways to be able to hire people that have, need that balance. But why not, if the person's on the screen, but it's live and you're having an interaction, but that maybe as a mom sitting at home at the kitchen table, they're employed, it's a win for you, win for them, win for the customer. So I think that's some of that new innovation that's going to have to happen, because we had a labor shortage before the pandemic. We just have a much bigger labor shortage now. Any uncomfortable moments that you want to share? I'll go first if you want me to. But I won't talk about my role at the TRA, because that's been great. I can remember being young in my role, and I'll tell you 2 quick stories. I was 29, had just gotten a seat at the table, was the only woman in this education company, and I'm very animated if you know me. So if I don't like you or I like you, you typically know if I like something or don't. And so I was very excited and went to my first couple of meetings with all of the men, and 2 of these guys were just not smart, right? Not smart, but they thought they were smart. We've all met those men. So I'm sitting at the table, and one of them's going on and droning on about something, trying to look smart. And we finished the meeting, and the CEO says, I need to talk to you. And of course, I'm 29, and I said, I'm going to get accolades because I'm so good. So I walk in the office, and he sits down, and he said, if you can't figure out your facial expressions, and you can't figure out how to be in a room and not look at someone like they are dumb, and yes, he is dumb, I agree, but you make sure that everyone knows that he is dumb. And I was like, that is ridiculous. That's terrible feedback. I believe in this company, a little bit like Carin, I'm going to tell you like it is. And I went home, and a couple days went by, and I realized it was probably the best advice he gave me. Because now look at my job as the lobbyist, right? I have to be in a room with lots of people that maybe I don't agree with. And I think the second one is what I worry about for all of us is not being in the room when some of the best conversations happen. And that's because things occur, and this may be shocking to you all, but I was at a big conference in Las Vegas, and we finished dinner, and the entire group poured over into a strip club. Well, I wasn't going in there. And I got back to my room, and I just hung out. And then I remember thinking, wait a minute, I bet you those guys are in there working their sales numbers. They're in conversations I can't be part of. I'm sure Alli will talk about this, why golf is so important. But it just struck me as that's actually a disadvantage too. I chose not to go in because I didn't want to get in trouble, but with who, I don't know, maybe God. But I was an older woman, I won't go. But it was that's not fair. I'm being excluded from conversations because I'm not doing those things. And that's uncomfortable, right? And not right. So I know you have these stories, ladies. Oh, I know you do. You're a lawyer. Anyone want to share anything?
Well, I think it was probably more uncomfortable for him when I was being interviewed, and I can tell the story because we're married now. But, I sit down to be interviewed, and we're talking about, how much he wants the event business to grow. And he said, well, 100%. I want it to grow 100%. And I'm like, well, what is it at now? Because I know my numbers. We talked about taking opportunities, and so I've done the bookkeeping part. I've done everything. Know your numbers. Do well in math. But I'm just looking at it. I said, okay, well, where are you at now? And he starts fumbling through some papers, and he goes, I'm going to have to find that out for you. And I said, okay, well, because the industry average, and this, is 15 years ago, is 8 to 10% of your sales if you have private dining. So what are your sales at? And so we had that conversation, and he was like, okay, I'll get back to you. And but yeah, that confidence, but it was, I was kind of uncomfortable because I was like, maybe I came across a little too cocky, but he was and is a great leader, and was very impressed with my question back at him, but that was just a funny, uncomfortable, but.
Skeeter Miller.
I would repeat one that I kind of talked about when we did the session beforehand, but this was, you think you're ready for the next position and you go in and ask for it. It doesn't quite land the way you think that it's going to land. And so I was at Applebee's. I was a senior vice president of operations, running the company operations, and they were going to promote someone to run all just shy of 2,000 locations. And I thought, that should be me, right? So I went into Lou Kosik, he was the chief people officer, and said, hey, Lou, I want to put my name in for the, the COO EVP role. He kind of looked at me and he was like, oh, okay. Well, now you know it's not going to go all that well, right? And he just said, well, that's interesting. He said, and this was a question I never thought about when you're thinking about navigating your career. He said, who is in the room when the decision is made? Who's really going to make that decision when that promotion happens? And I said, well, the 7 of you guys that are on the senior team. And he said, well, how many of them are going to vote for you? How many of them are going to support you? And I'm like, well, all of them, like you, right? I have like fantastic results, right? And everything seems to have all lined up well. And then he said, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. In the last year, how many times have you had any of those 7 individuals come to you for any advice? Anything that you're working on right now? I'm like, well, none. Then it's me, the operator. Well, I'm in the field, I'm in the restaurants, I'm not there. He goes, well, then how many times have you gone to them and asked them for some advice that you're working on? And I said, none. And he said, what makes you think they're going to support you? Okay, so how many were going to support you? And I had to say 0. And he was right. I didn't have a relationship with any of them, really. I just thought, put your head down, work hard, and someone will notice. It's not how the game is played. So you really do have to step up, like you said, be an advocate for yourself, and use that network. But then I went in and I met with each one of them. We talked about the business. I learned a lot, they learned a lot, and I ultimately got the job. But wow, it was humbling. I will say that.
That network, and that I always try to tell, it's like politics, right? It doesn't happen from being isolated. You've got to build those bridges, and always remember, don't ever cross someone intentionally, because you will end up reporting to them one day and it will be very ugly. And so whatever you do and however you can do it, you will meet so many people that you just don't like or don't respect. But in some cases, you have to play the game. That doesn't mean selling out your integrity, but it means making sure you understand who are actually the power players in your organization and how can I get to know them and take whatever good I can from them to make myself better. But that's important. You can never do this alone. I think we'd all agree with that.
I have another interesting story. So at a certain point in your career as a lawyer, you are put up for shareholder. And if you've ever seen the movie Animal House, back in the day when I was up for shareholder, they put up a big screen with your photo and people vote. And if you've ever seen the movie Animal House, people will throw beer cans if they didn't like you, those kinds of things. Didn't happen in our firm, but that's the way that it works. And you were supposed to find out in around October if you were going to be put up and voted on. So I'm working at a firm, and October comes and goes. It's my year, and I hear nothing. And then November comes and goes, and I hear nothing, and I'm starting to get really agitated and antsy. And December comes, and the vote's at the end of December. So I march into my boss's office, and I take my seat in my 5-inch heels, and he's a man of smaller stature, and I let loose. And I no swear words, of course, because I'm from the South, but I just say, I don't understand, you need to tell me what's going on. I was very upset. I was very emotional. And he let me talk, and I finished, and he just looked at me and he said, and I will never forget this, I didn't say anything because you intimidate me. For probably one of the only times in my life I was speechless. I had no idea how to respond to that. What do you say to someone? What do you say to a man who says that to you? I'm sorry? How can I help? There was no response for me. It ended up okay. I mean, I ended up being put up and making it, but that process was horrific. And I thought, if this is how it is for me, I don't know how it is for all the people coming behind me.
It's almost unbelievable.
It was.
Wow.
Surreal.
Man, well, we use Alicia a lot as my attorney, so I can tell you she's fabulous. Alli?
I'll give a fun example, I guess, of when I worked for the USGA. I ran the U.S. Men's Mid-Amateur Championship. So it was men 25 and older playing. And in golf, if you're running national championships, you're doing every single thing you can do for the player, just like in our restaurants, we're doing everything we can do for our guest. And so there was this committee system, and it was made up of men. The Men's Mid-Amateur Championship Committee was made up of all men, and here's Alli, a woman, that's kind of upsetting the apple cart a little bit because she's just for everything for the player. And so we had these rules that, you know, the player has their locker room, and the volunteer committee should have their locker room. So this was Milwaukee Country Club. It's one of the finest clubs in the United States, and the men's locker room is really, really nice. Well, I'm like, this is a player-only place. The committee members shouldn't be in there. And so the men should be using the women's locker room. We'll turn it into the men's locker room, just like you have to do for women, vice versa, when you're on space. So a committee member comes up to me and he says, well, we can't use the women's locker room. He says, there are no urinals in there. And I said, do you have a urinal in your home? He didn't. And so that was the end of that.
End of the conversation.
And so I think, you know, a lot of that is trying to stick by the principles of whatever it is that you can to do what's right at the moment. And try to ask questions in the end and try to get the best result for what you're trying to do. And so, silly example, but it happened.
I don't know why I feel the need to ask who might have a urinal in their home. Skeeter Miller, of course you do. So let's do one piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were younger, and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions. So what's the one thing you wish someone had told you or you knew 20, 30 years ago?
You want me to go? So here I am, guilty of not taking a vacation for the last 3 years, right? But that's what I would say is take your time off. Through the restaurant industry, I took one little detour and worked for Nutrisystem weight loss centers. And they sold me the job saying, okay, nobody diets on the weekend, so you don't have to come to work then. And Monday is diet action day, so that's really busy, but the rest of the job's, you know, not too bad, right? So I'm thinking, oh my God, quality of life, right? I still worked 80 hours a week, but then the thing is, everybody knows you're going to work it, and they depend on you to do it. So if I would tell my younger self, take the time off. There you go.
Awesome. Who else?
I mean, I'm going to answer it in a little bit of a different way because I think what it helped me when I was younger is affirmation and really finding someone who found a skill or found leadership qualities in me and affirmed them and then challenged me. And I would have never thought to try that. You know, like I said, bookkeeping, I was like, oh man. You know, as the VP of he was like, listen, we're not going to open for a little while. We need you to help with a little bit of the HR, a little bit of the bookkeeping. But, you know, once we open, you can do the banquet part. And I'm like, oh. But I did it. He was like, you're very organized. You can, and I learned so much. So I think that affirmation is so critical. And I do that for my younger colleagues that are a part of my team. And I talk about the big picture because even though they may be entry level, what do you want to do, in the next 5 years? So that was really instrumental when I was younger. So I really try to do that.
That mentorship, we have so many programs now for, Carin.
I didn't cover Gleam.
Yeah, maybe just mention Gleam real quick, because I think it's just a great example of the kind of work that's going on in the industry to help this next generation.
Yeah, it's a group called Gleam, and it's Global Leadership Enhancement and Mentorship. So look at gleamnetwork.net and take a look at it. We are so proud of the work we've done throughout the pandemic. It's always hard to figure out wow, I'd love to have a mentor. I really want to work on that one big thing that we've already talked about, and that's what Gleam is all about. We'll pair you with someone to work on your one big thing that you think might be holding you back a little bit. And it's just a fabulous program. So for $75, more of an entry level, you get a mentor for 6 months, or $150 you get at the executive level, you get a mentor for 6 months, and you can't even get an hour of coaching for that, right? It's just enough to offset the technology skills, or the technology platform. But it is just a great way. Like I said, we've paired over 300 mentors and mentees, and the stories are so heartwarming. We watched an individual get up, and we have a quarterly, get together, and it's of course Zoom. And this one person just simply said, I was working on my one big thing, but along the way I found courage. There's no way I could have spoken to the hundreds of you on this call right now. Of course, we're all crying and all that. But you watch somebody that got into a Starbucks management program. There's just so many wonderful skills. And I think the driving force behind a lot of us is like, we all look back when a mentor came into our life, and the only thing we say is, I wish I'd have found that person sooner. So the Gleam Network, take a look at it. I'd love to see you volunteer as a mentor or be a mentee. And it is a fabulous way. The quality of people involved are incredible, and I'd love to see you all participate.
It's great work, Carin.
Thank you. And Emily's a part of it too, so
yes.
we love that.
And I have a great mentee through another mentee program, because we all believe in this, from University of North Texas. And it's just so fun to be able to impact her from her freshman year. I'll be with her through her entire experience in hospitality. And just the uncertainty. I think that's what sometimes you need to be able to say to somebody, I'm really uncomfortable, I'm uncertain, I don't think I can do it. That whole imposter syndrome women suffer from, right? Someone's going to find out I'm not as good as I think I am. That's just all a big lie in your head. And so that mentor can be that sounding board. And a lot of times getting a mentor outside of your current company is even better, because you can have those really tough conversations and the ones you don't want to share, and they're not going back. So.
Exactly. Thank you.
Alli or Vanessa? Alli or Alicia?
I would say protect your personal brand. So you work really hard on your restaurant. You work really hard, furthering the interest of your restaurant. It's all about building your business. But at the end of the day, your personal brand is what you have and what your restaurant really is. And for me, that personal brand is integrity. Because if you don't have that, if you lose that, you're not going to have any customers. Everything falls apart if you don't have integrity. People don't trust you. People might not like your food. They might not trust your brand. So at the end of the day, you need to take that time and protect your personal brand, because that is a piece of your bigger brand. Integral
Excellent
piece.
advice.
I love that. Reputation matters. Wow, that's great.
Awesome.
That's great. I think listening to, I grew up in a family wholesale business, and my grandmother was a CFO before they ever called a woman that. She actually caught someone embezzling from the bank, which is quite interesting. But, paying attention to what people like that are doing around you when you don't really know that you ought to be paying attention. And seeing how they do things, like today with all the technology we have, and I watched the simple way that my grandmother did accounting to the penny, and now we have all these challenges around just using technology and getting people to learn how to add. If the POS system goes down and the power goes out, and how do we get people to learn? If you can't do it by hand, you can't do it at all. And so I think if I were, as I learned those things or relearned those things, it's how do we teach people some of the more practical things that are just simple, that you do learn in early age and in early childhood education. So not exactly the answer to your question, but almost.
Yeah, invest in yourself early.
Yeah.
And I think mine would be know who you are. And a lot of people in this room know that I went through a little career back and forth in the last year. And much of that was finally finding my own voice and deciding that what the world tells you is important maybe doesn't align with what's important to you. And so if you can really be clear about what matters and how you want to spend your time, talent, and treasure, you'll make very good career moves. And again, it's not often what we are told, especially as women, of what matters in life. You know in your core what really is important to you and how you want to spend your time. And this notion of, can we have it all? I think you can have it all. I just think you have to determine what all means to you. And that word all means something very different to each person. You know, I have 16-year-old twins. There's days I'm a great mom. There's days I'm a great CEO. Not always on both days at the same time. But I don't call it a balance. I call it a blend. It's just throw it all in the bowl and it all works together. But, you know, my version of all is very specific to me. And I think a lot of times we put so much pressure on women to try to be great at both, at home and at work. And we need to get that pressure off because it really is an impossible task. Balance is impossible to do and we'll never get there. So be true to yourself and do the work to figure out what matters to you and then stay true to that and don't let the world tell you anything different. So do you want to take some questions? Yes. Ty has a little mic.
So I'm really tall, so I totally resonate with what you say, and I think that it's like something that a lot of women do struggle with. So I just wanted to say thank you for your advice on a lot of that and some of the challenges that you've shared and how you went through those. I think I had too many questions, so I'm going to get down to just one. I have climbed pretty quickly in my particular career because I'm a very results-driven person, and in that I find myself in a unique position where I am managing people not only of both genders but also different age demographics. So I'm in my late 20s. I am managing teams of people who are just graduating, handling people who are doing market research and analysis and enterprise partnerships and venue relations and all these things. And my biggest question is, how do you manage folks who have been working longer than I've been alive? And making sure that I'm able to lead them in a way that really has success, but also recognizes their talents in a way that they don't feel like they're kind of being stepped over.
I've got just one piece of advice to answer that, and it may not resonate with you, but I have learned over the years that hearing is a sense and listening is a skill. So you can hear them talking, blah, 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 we should do this and this. But if you listen and you figure out what works and you can have a conversation based on that, I think that goes a lot further. You know, you need to, instead of thinking everything is white noise, everybody's just trying to throw things at you, filter it, listen to it, filter it, and have a discussion with them and say, look, I've heard what you've said, you want to try X, but here's why I don't think X will work. Can you prove me wrong? Give them a chance to have a dialogue with you as opposed to just letting it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think you've got to ask the right questions, really be analytical about it, and also the younger generation is really going to look at you and what you're posing, they're going to look up to you. So always keep that in mind. But also, just because your team may be older, have more experience, they still see value in you, and but I think that conversation is very important, just listening, because sometimes that can be a disgruntled thing, is that they're not being heard. Yeah, and so just continuing that leadership in that way is very, very important, and being respectful. You know, sometimes you're going to have to change the conversation and the tone per person, and just really being mindful and smart about that.
Yeah, just last thing I'd add is I think two great pieces of advice. Walk into that room with confidence. You earned the position, and so still feel good about that, but add the respect and the listening and being heard, and feel really good and proud of yourself.
Just to chime in, I think too, position yourself to learn everything you can from them. You're smart. You wouldn't be there if you weren't. And I think the more we all can surround ourselves with people that are smarter than we are in general, the better off we'll be. But you have a great opportunity in front of you, and you should maximize it. And I'm quite confident you can.
And I would say that something I learned later in my career is if you can hire people in your key areas that are actually a lot better than you, your job becomes so much better and you're so much more effective. I mean, I looked at the team last night that pulled off this incredible event, and it was like, just get out of their way. You know, I trust them, I believe in them, and my job is that I don't know how to execute an event to that level of someone like a Vanessa or my team, but I have to get the right people in the right spot. So for you, I think the word you heard of several times though is respect. A lot of times we have a bias about people based on age or pick a category these days. At the end of the day, that person that maybe has been around a long time has tremendous experience that you can pull from, and what everyone wants is just respect. So I would just not assume that because they're older, maybe they don't have as much to bring or they don't want to change. I'd also say you may have some people that won't make it on your journey, and that's okay too, because everyone who got you where you are now, that team may not be the same team to take you forward. And that's okay, you just do it with dignity and respect. But that's a decision you have to make as well, right? If there is someone who's been around a long, long time who doesn't want to kind of share your vision and go forward, then there may not be a place for them. But then you have that separation in a really good way.
How y'all doing, ladies?
Great.
Great.
Thank you for taking y'all time out to answer questions. I have two things. I need the information about the program that you just spoke
Gleam.
about. Gleam. Okay. And then also, I guess mine is kind of like a futuristic concern. I've walked around the show, and I noticed a lot of the tech company that's involving and everything else. So as I say, a grounds person that works the line or in the kitchen, how do you see that coming up in the future? I think that's very important because tech is coming. You just said drive through from home. So I'm just having concerns or questions about the future of the hospitality.
Great questions. Who wants to jump in first on maybe the trends? Because we'll get you the Gleam information. Anyone who is interested in Gleam, just pop after, and we'll make sure you have the right website and get you all signed up. And then who wants to address, because it is, you go watch right now, the robot went by here a minute ago.
Yeah. I'll hop in real quickly, and I'm learning a lot too. In the last few years, we switched to a KDS system so that in eliminating tickets, for example. And I think it's up to leaders in the kitchen to be able to communicate properly, to teach and train, and also for every skill set and every line position in the kitchen to want to be involved to the extent that they want to with regard to technology. And how do you make technology work better for you and the restaurant and the guest? And right now, everybody wants things 5 minutes ago. How do we work on keeping things hot and fast? And hopefully, some of this will enable you to do your position better, and at the same time not stifle the stuff that we're doing with human beings. Because I personally believe we need human beings, and I'm not sure when I will have to be able to have a robot. That's not. I would like to. I don't know that I see that yet, even though it's right here. I have nooks and crannies in a 100-year-old building, and I don't know how you're going to get there without falling over. So I would say immerse yourself in the technology to be a part of it, and don't let it run over you. Embrace it, or it will.
Yeah, I think that, it's been said the restaurant industry is the last adapter of technology. We've kind of been the slowest to get there, and we have relied on this wonderful group of frontline service workers. But they're saying we won't have that pre-pandemic level of team members back until at least 2024 is what I'm hearing the projection. So in the meantime, technology is going to step in. The way I look at it is like, I mentioned I'm on a board of Kura Sushi, and they've got the little robots that deliver the food, and it's one less person there, but that's one less person to split the tips with. So the people in the front line are like, we love that robot, right? They show up on time, they do some of my work, and I still get my tips, But so there's some really cool things about it as well. And if it can continue to do, the technology can replace jobs that people don't love to do, and then the restaurant industry can be filled with jobs that we love coming to work to do, then we all win as well. But we have to learn it. Just like financial skills and technology, we have to learn it to move forward.
And I think that's just a really important point is the automation of those repetitive tasks that no one really wants to do. If we can automate those through technology and robotics, that's a massive win. And I think you're going to see the industry shake out into two sides, the experiential side, heavy hospitality, heavy people. And then you have now, I think I just saw Taco Bell opened a 3-lane drive-through in Cleveland. The food is all made upstairs, a lot of robotic technology sent down on a little conveyor belt, and you've already paid and it goes in your car. So there's this like sort of almost separation right now that's happening in the industry. Mm-hmm. So some of those jobs that we have are hard to fill are because many times people don't want them. So how can you evolve your skill set, right? Because it sounds like you like the industry, and then keep evolving as this technology so it doesn't run you over, but realize that in order to kind of meet demand, we're going to have to balance tech and people without losing. I think what makes us special and why we love the industry is the hospitality, the people side. So I'm getting the high sign. Any last minute comments or one last question?
So first, I've been to a handful of panels, and this has by far been like the most informative and educational and like just eye-opening. So like, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate that. And then I guess my question is, you all talk about your stories, and it's all about like overcoming these obstacles that exist for women. And the default for so many companies is a company culture that is like geared towards males. So like, let's go to happy hour. You mentioned the strip club. Golfing or like hunting trips and things like that. So my question is really like, what have you seen that's worked, that's just created a culture that kind of just naturally removes these obstacles, so you're not having to say, well, I can't go to that happy hour. How am I going to find that FaceTime? I can't, like, I don't hunt, I don't fish, like I'm not going to go on that trip. So I'm just curious if you've seen anything either at your own companies or other companies that's been successful.
So I'll give you mine. I mean, I would much rather, for me personally, right? So I have kids. I want to be with my family. So if the company, two things, the company gives me space and says, you know what, we're actually not doing a dinner tonight. All of you are going to go home and be with your families. That is the biggest gift you could give me. Or send me to the spa for a day. but by myself. I don't want to talk to anybody. But I mean, I think those are the moments, like, and I think it's like our own team trying to figure out what is important to them, and it may not be the same to all. You know, some people may be in a different place, and we're lucky we have 27 employees, so it can be more customized. But I think it's just really understanding that sometimes taking people on a trip or giving them a dinner or celebrating them that way is probably the last thing they want, because what they really want to do is just get in their home and watch a Hallmark movie with their family. That's what I do. Yeah. But I mean, that's for me, that's, you know, it's just don't think that everyone likes to do what you do. Ask your people what they want to do.
We've kind of landed on charitable events. We get together and all volunteer together. You kind of feel good, you get to know one another, and you see skills and musical talent or different things that your people that you never even knew about that just seem to emerge when someone breaks out in a song or whatever. But it's a combination of feeling good, it builds your culture, and everybody feels pretty comfortable doing it.
We do a lot of activities, you know, around that are like, we all can do, like pickleball. We'll set up pickleball in the back parking lot, and we usually do it at a time like 3 to 5. So that way we're all down there, and then at 5 everyone can break away and go home or still stay and have fun. We just did Punch Bowl Social and Bold, and that was 3 to 5 also, and that was a lot of fun. So really, like you said, listening, asking what the team wants to do and the activities. And then also, our event coordinators, they are, part of it is sales, right? It's showcasing their event space, building those relationships. So what I do with, because each of them are different, each coordinator is different. Some have kids young in school and some don't. And so I'm like, hey, what's going to be important to you? Is a luncheon better for you to go and network, or a breakfast? Or no, I like the happy hours. That's where, you know, I thrive and have fun, but also get to network. So really, yeah, listening to your different teammates and what's better for them and encouraging them.
I agree with all of that as well. And one thing we just recently started doing on a regular basis is when we onboard a new staff member is have them complete a form where we ask them all these questions, from their favorite color to their favorite car to what they like doing outside of work, because it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it is difficult to make it perfect for everyone. But I think that's a good start in asking those questions and the types of activities that you can ultimately plan together, or not.
It's a great question. It really was.
Yeah.
I think it's a wrap. Oh, one more question. I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for coming and talking to us. Whenever you're having like a bad day or through tough times, do you have like a mantra or a quote that you just kind of say over in your head that gets you through like some troublesome times?
Steadfast with grace.
Oh, I love that.
Be just continue to work hard, but also have grace for yourself, and for others.
I don't think that I'm that deep to think about it, but I keep seeing that thing on Facebook that says, if you want to make people happy, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. Maybe it's somewhere there. I think we all know we're going to have tough days and all that, but pick yourself up and come back the next day, and you're going to be awesome.
Mine is this too shall pass.
Yeah.
I think she's told me that a lot too. No, I was raised in a military family, and so I had the fortune of there were no sick days. I mean, you literally would be bleeding and you'd go to school because it was like someone was dying in some war and you had to go to school. So for me, I think it's just, if you know you're doing the right thing, as hard as it is, and I can tell you COVID was hard. It was hard on everyone. And there were days I would fall asleep just at my desk. And then 3 a.m, my husband would get up to go to the bathroom and he'd find me in there and he's like, you got to try to get some sleep. But you just kept fighting because you believed in it. So I think if you believe and you're doing what you believe in, you actually never give up. And that's called grit, which we should probably do a topic on that one time. But you just keep going because failure isn't an option. But I probably should get I've been told I should do yoga as well, but I can't get there either. So maybe I'll get a mantra. That's a great question. All right, well, I think everyone's going to be here for a while after. If you want to visit, make sure you get the Gleam information. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being at the show. We'll be in Houston next year, so we hope you'll join us there as well.